Hello, everyone, and welcome to our little 5-minute hello to the Google Drive. It used to be back when we bought our computers that we'd have to actually go out and buy Microsoft Office and add it to our computer in order to have the ability to type or work with numbers or do presentations or things like that. Now, if your needs are not too great, and you have a new computer, you don't necessarily have to buy Microsoft Office anymore. Google provides an item called the Google Drive, and within the Google Drive, there's a whole bunch of apps that do the stuff that Microsoft Word used to do or Microsoft Excel used to do. The nice thing about it is as long as you have a Gmail account or a Google account, same thing, all this stuff is absolutely free. And the way you get to it is you start up your web browser, whether it's Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, and then you go to the Google page, and you can get there by going to google.com or google.ca. Once you're there, you can go and click on this little square made of dots called the Apps Launcher, and you can go into what's called your Google Drive. Now, if you are not signed into Gmail, you have to have a Gmail account for this sort of stuff to work. If you're not signed into Gmail, you'll be asked to sign in using your Gmail address and password, and that gets you to your drive. Now, when you get into your drive, basically what you're seeing is your cloud storage area called My Drive. Now, when I'm looking at that, this is where all of the material that I create while in the Google Drive gets stored. It's kind of like the File Explorer in Windows, if you've ever played around with that. Now, within the Google Drive, you can come up to this button called New, and if you click on New, you get to see what sort of stuff you can work with. So for instance, Google Docs is the equivalent to Microsoft Word. It's not an exact equivalent, but it's pretty darn close. If you're writing letters and stories and, say, basic simple reports, Google Docs will do a lot of that work for you. Google Sheets is the equivalent to Microsoft Excel, so if you have to work with budgets or numbers, that's what you'll use. Google Slides is a way that you can make presentations online, but I'll be honest, it's not quite as good as PowerPoint if you've ever used PowerPoint. And Google Forms is a way to actually make surveys and forms online that you can distribute to people and get feedback from them. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of other little apps within the Google Drive as well. Now, the nice thing about these apps is, let's say I go click on Google Docs for a second. It opens up in a new tab, and the tab appears up here. And this is what I have, which is very much like Microsoft Word 2003, if you've ever used earlier versions of Microsoft Word. So at this point, I can sit down and I can, start writing my story. Let's say it was a dark and stormy night. Now, the nice thing about the Google Drive is anything that I create within it, for instance, this Google Doc, is automatically saved. So I don't have to go and keep clicking the save button every 15 minutes or so. So I'm just going to go click up here where it says untitled document. It automatically takes the first line of the document, but I'm just going to call this my story. And I'll tap my enter key. Now, if I come along here and I just close off this tab, I'm going to find that if I go poking around within my drive, or if I go click an area called recent, that my story appears up over here, and I just need to double click on it to jump back in. Now, the nice thing about this is that all the work I do gets stored in the Google Drive. It's not stored on my computer. So if something goes wrong with my computer, it's still stored over at Google. And the other thing that's really cool about all of these apps in the Google Drive is that they're accessible from any device with an internet connection. So as long as I can sign into my Gmail account using my Gmail address and password, I can access this document from any computer I happen to be near, or even from a phone or a tablet. And I can even go and edit this document on a phone or a tablet. Like I said, this is kind of like an older version of Microsoft Word. Then if I go and I click on the commands up here, I'll see a series of menus. And that used to be the way that we'd work with a lot of our Microsoft Office stuff. And a lot of the commands on these menus are also available from these buttons here on this bar. Now, this is just a very quick hello to some of the stuff that's uh, within your Google Drive, and especially the apps within the Google Drive. If you'd like to know more, check out my website at gruntmulti.com or get in touch with me. And if you're interested in finding out how Google Docs works, let me know and we can certainly help you out with that. But just so you know, the Google Drive and the apps within may be a very low cost, and in fact no cost because it's free, alternative to Microsoft Office. So before you go shelling out the big money for a subscription or anything like that, give the Google Drive and the Google Apps a try. I think you might like it. Thanks very much for listening.